So I want to begin today's webinar by saying thank you to all of you who are online. I promise you that you will find the next 30 minutes to be time very well spent. It is truly, truly an honor to have James E. Hughes as our guest today. Jay, who's joining from Aspen, is a leading author and advisor in family wealth and governance. He has written multiple books. His works include Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family, The Compact Among Generations, and his co-authors titles such as Complete Family Wealth and Family Trusts. He's a retired attorney who founded a New York City law practice representing private clients globally and served as a partner at Coudert Brothers and Jones Day. At the risk of embarrassing you, Jay, you are truly considered a giant in the wealth advisor community.
Well, John, I doubt that very, very much. My father was, and I have his name, but I'm doing the best I can not to besmirch his great service.
You have done an enormous amount. I think our guests recognize that, and certainly the field recognized that. To our audience, please feel free to leave any questions in the chat. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Jay, I know that a lot of your work has been dedicated to not just preservation of family wealth, but preservation of the family itself. Why has this been such an important topic to you?
John, when I was a very young lawyer, back in 1967, that'll give people an idea that I've been at this for a very long time. I realized after 6 months of law practice that I probably would have left the law and moved into social anthropology or social psychology, something about families and tribes and clans and how governance systems worked. But for one thing, the private client field, it was then called trust and estates, but today we call it private client field, was the one place in the law, if you were in a big city practice, as I was in New York City, where you had clients immediately. And I was fascinated by the people that were assigned to me by the senior partners to settle their estates, organize their trusts, help with their children, the kinds of things that private client lawyers do. And I've never looked back. I thought, well, these are just really interesting people who I think I can learn from, both for my own family, for other clients. So that one characteristic, I really like the people, fascinated by what they could teach me. And I'm not being trite, that they are my teachers, has been my lodestar through all of the years since. I want to add two things here because I think they're themes and they may, as we go on in the conversation, they may emerge and also it might lead to something in the chat. Some years ago, not many, after 30 years, literally 30 years, I'm serious about that, of trying to find a different word for wealth, because I didn't believe a family's wealth was its money. I believe the family's wealth was its qualitative self, its spiritual, social, intellectual, and human capital, its qualitative self. And John, I looked and looked and looked, and finally one day I went to the dictionary. Oh dear, how stupid of me. I went to the dictionary and I looked up the word wealth, and to my absolute delight, I discovered it means well-being. Wealth is two Anglo-Saxon words, so it goes back to the earliest English, back around the 4th or 5th century. Wealth, we have it in commonwealth and commonweal, and wealth to all people through all of history who spoke English meant well-being. That solved for me that great problem of what I was doing, was that people were using the right wealth, but not with the right consciousness. The consciousness they had was wealth means financial capital. Well, it can, but that's a very small meaning. What it really means is, do you have a common purpose of affinity, spiritual purpose? of helping each other's journey of happiness. Can you make good decisions together? Social capital. Are you committed to a mediative process? Intellectual capital. Are you a learning family? Are you learning like crazy all the time and sharing what you learn? And then human capital, which is somewhat our conversation today, but I think it includes all of them. Are you thriving human beings? Are you helping each other, enhancing each other's lives? So the wealth question is so interesting to me because I had the right word, but I didn't know it.
And it points back to the family.
100%. The other thing that's been a lodestar for me about families is that something that was said by the great philosopher Aristotle in his book, The Politics. I'm not being frou-frou. This is a really foundational statement in his book, The Politics, that he wrote, let's say, 360 BC. He said, you can't, John, have a flourishing society if the families that make it up are not flourishing themselves, and vice versa. You have to have flourishing families to have a flourishing society. So what has also been of great interest to me as I've wandered all over the world, helping families literally all over the world, has been the awareness that if my help could help them flourish, and they in turn would see that flourishing meant they were contributing to flourishing society, then we all do well. Yeah. The question is essentially, is the family's boats rising? How are the individuals doing, obviously, within that system? Are they rising? Is the family then boats rising, if you feel of it that way? And then do you have a flourishing society? And by the way, that question, and I'll make this much longer, that question is particularly interesting because to some of our listeners today, they may be reading that we're about over the next 50 years to have a couple $100 trillion move from the silent generation and the baby boomers to Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. All of that's moving in families. And that's moving in China and India and Vietnam and lots of places that have only become wealthy financially since the Second World War. And they have no history of inheritance. So we're about to move into a place where families are going to be incredibly important to the society that emerges globally. And they're going to have to be the seedbed, the learning place for each of their members to learn how to integrate this capital that's coming into their lives and thriving as human beings. So we're in a very, very interesting moment in history.
It's fascinating. And later I want to mention something about the intergenerational wealth transfer. So thank you for bringing it up. And what's interesting, as you know, our work is healthcare advisory work. And one of our team members, Beverly Shankman, last year received an award for her work in substance use and mental health. And when she got the award, the first thing she said was, we look at the family unit. Yep. If you show me somebody who has mental illness, we look at the entire family. And that's one of the commonalities that you and I have, and we have so many, but one is that, and sort of looking at things comprehensively.
Yeah, exactly.
You and I have had numerous conversations about the intersection of wealth and health. And many members of our audience work in the financial advisory space. What advice could you offer them about how to navigate respective clients' needs and objectives in enhancing wealth as well as their health?
John, when we take on an advisory responsibility, we might think we're taking on an advisory responsibility to move money, we'll call it financial capital, intermediated from one place to another. That's probably true at some level, but reality is someone owns that money, or it's in trust, or there's an owner of that money. So when that money moves, It's a social issue of that entity, not an economic issue. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Family is a social thing. Human beings are social entities.
Sure.
When I was at college, I had a professor who taught me as a freshman that any important problem, you had to decide what the social, the economic, the political, the cultural, and sometimes the spiritual issues were, and then you had to order them. So this movement of money that we're talking about is actually a social phenomenon for everyone who's in it. It's not an economic phenomenon. The leading issue is social. Now, here's the interesting thing on health. I can tell the wonderful people that have taken their time today that if they aren't establishing in their practices with their clients a culture of care, which is a social matter, just like the health care that you're establishing, they're setting the bar too low. I can also tell them that when that money comes, it's a meteor from outer space to that person, psychologically and emotionally. It's nothing to do with them at all. Nothing. And yet they then have to integrate it. Oh my goodness, that's a health problem. Oh my, and by the way, it's incredibly difficult. Why? Because it always comes first as a burden. Always. You have to be with people, do stuff you wouldn't choose to do. So you have to integrate this, and it starts as a burden. So the health issues of this process are incredibly important to the well-being of the clients. And let me tell you, very few people care about their well-being. Being a rich person means you don't get much care. Now, not care in the way you and I are discussing it today, a culture of care. Right. Lots of people think, well, you don't have any problems.
Right.
Why should I care?
Right.
Oh, but coming back to our theme, if that person is healthy in their human capital, just what you and I and what you've helped me be healthy as a human being, if they're healthy as human beings, then that next level up, can they be a learning system? Intellectual capital comes to developmentally easily, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure.
And then the next question up, can we make good decisions together?
Yeah.
Complex decisions. That becomes easier. And then the spiritual question, do I have a purpose and a goal to help everybody in my family and myself have an enhanced life, emerges.
You break it down so clearly and simplistically, yet so elegantly. So thank you. A little closer to home here. How do you see wealth advisors and health advisors working together on a given client?
Well, let me say, first of all, that the psychological aspects of life and the use of psychological assistances were not something my parents, born in 1913 and 1919, knew anything about.
Yeah.
When I was born in 1942, I didn't know as a student or as a lawyer helping families much about it either. But in my 40s, I had to learn about it, both for my own well-being, which wasn't so well, and my clients. Now, if you carry forward as the wonderful issues of Freud and Jung, 20th century people, by the way, not 19th century, 20th century people, and their students around the world, bringing in Buddhism, bringing in a number of the other areas of compassion and learning. We are at the beginning, in my view, John, of these ideas being available to everybody all the time. Now, there's also a risk of over-medicalization. I may be very careful there. I'm not going there. But the ability to utilize the best ideas in the world are now available in translations that are accurate and available for every great idea in the world. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So isn't our task as advisors to bring that material forward? Not say you do this or that. That's not our job. But isn't it our job to say, here's something you might want to read or watch a video or or find John Samuels and he'll get you to the texts. But
Yeah.
we're at an incredible inflection point, in my opinion, for the greatest ideas of how to live a life being available to everybody, and that will help lots of the people that are struggling. Of course it will.
So you talked about this intergenerational wealth transfer. Do you think health advisory can be one of the bridges around the family unit as they look at wealth transfer?
Absolutely. John, in history of ideas and the history of profession, there are 4 professions of the robe, as the French refer to them, or as is also commonly referred to, the noble professions. 4: ministry, high academia, medicine, and law. Each of them is integral to a successful life and society. The spiritual deals with the well-being of the mind and the heart in the larger issues. The high academia is storytelling. What does it mean to be human? Humanism. Medicine deals with the well-being physically and mentally of a community and individuals, and law deals with creating a safe, orderly place for people to wake up in. There is no successful culture and then civilization that does not grow those 4 elements.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, why do they exist? They evolved because they were necessary for people to have a safe and enhanced experience. So if we just take the physical and mental well-being, it doesn't exclude the other 3. They're all integral. All the advisors in these professions are integral to the experience of that family and that individual. Integral. They must be integrated and used. The wonderful thing about those committed to the physical and mental well-being is that they speak directly to one's daily experience. Who am I? How is my overall self, my physiognomy, myself? How am I doing? It's an enormously important set of questions. However, without a spiritual practice of purpose and reason and aspiration, without knowing what it is to be human, and the questions of humanism, of which science is a subordinate, not leader. That's a real problem in our world right now. And without someone who's helping you and your family create a safe, orderly space for you to wake up in, the medical's not enough.
And you're talking comprehensively. I mean, when you talk about spiritual and purpose, we often see 2nd and 3rd generation with failure to launch because
Tragic.
Lack of purpose.
Yes, and can I offer to the wonderful people that took their time, which is their treasure, to join you and I today, one of the greatest questions you can ask someone you love is, what is your aspiration? And in aspiration, for those of us who are so old that we had to take Latin, aspiration is 2 Latin words, ad, to spiritus, to spirit. Aspiration is that thing which lifts us. And John, I can tell you this, all over the world, I've asked people for 30 years, what's your big aspiration? I've gotten the most wonderful answers. And then, by the way, in my own practice, with my own family, my own personal practice, and the clients that I have, after I ask them about aspiration, I ask them, does it inspire you? In spiritu. Inspire you. And then I ask them, if we know your aspiration and you're inspired by it, how much will you perspire? And then I know how I can help. Isn't that interesting?
That's wonderful.
And by the way, that integrates all 4 professions.
Yeah, that's right.
Whichever of those disciplines, law, medicine, ministry, and high academia, that we come from, all can benefit from that question.
Yeah. That's that's so foundational. It's foundational to wellness. It's foundational to happiness. It's foundational to loneliness, and the family, and structuring the family unit in a healthy way.
Yeah, and this question of failure to launch that is terribly sad. Compassion rises, of course it does, and empathy, the great Eastern virtues, rise, it seems to me, when we face that. It can help for somebody to believe that you care about that person's aspiration. It's a wonderful place to start. By the way, I did, some people will say, you must be talking about dreams. Let me say, I did ask people for many years as I traveled around the world, what was your big dream? And got a lot of good answers, but I get better answers. What's your big aspiration? I don't know why, but I do.
I can understand that. Yeah. Recently, the team at Wellworth has had the distinct opportunity to work with you directly.
Yes.
How was that experience? And are there any takeaways you can share with our audience?
Well, I have to admit that I'm a person who has had help in his professional life, old-fashioned help, real secretaries, people who really helped me. I can't make appointments. They frustrate me terribly, particularly if I'm on hold. Or particularly if the person 3 or 4 times can't get to the person who I need to talk to. John, when you and your team took me on, lifted me up like a baby and said, we will take care of this. Care. I cannot tell you how much it meant to me and how much it means to me. And as you know, I've recently had a significant procedure in a significant hospital, and organizing that for me, I just cannot give a more stronger testimonial what that relieved me of, so I could be the patient. I can't be, for me, the advocate, and I can't be, for me, the means of reaching through the medical system to the people that you and I know in a certain way I have to talk to. So this was an incredible experience, and I am very, very excited today to be able to give testimony, as they used to say in the churches of America, about this. It really makes a difference. And I'll also say that for about 10 years, not recently, I gave up. I was trying to find a medical quarterback. I was trying to find somebody who could speak to my Western doctors, my integral doctors, my Eastern doctors, my dentists, my eye people. And I asked a number of people over the years, would you be my quarterback? And I'm very willing to pay you significantly for that service because I need an intermediary. I couldn't find anybody. And John, I've now found Wellworth. So testimony, yes, this has made a huge difference in Jay Hughes's life.
First of all, thank you for that. We're honored to work with you, and family, generationally. And as we look at our work with clients, we like to work comprehensive and holistic. So when I say that, a lot of our work is holistic around the family and providers, and also the wealth team, and looking broadly around around care and treatment.
Yeah, clients like me are looking for integral services, not only integral in the medical context, but integral in the sense of me as a human being and my family as human beings in a system. We're looking for people that want to help us as a system enhance each other's experience. That's such an important ingredient in well-being. Wealth is well-being.
Wealth is right. We say because healthcare is wealth care. And for yesterday, we were on a call with a gentleman who has stomach cancer, and we were talking to him about second opinions and how we're going to work with him. And someone on my team said to his wife, "How are you doing?"
Yes, it's exactly the right question.
And she said, "Thank you for asking. I have mental health challenges. I'm worried about the insurance. I'm stressed. I'm taking off work." So a lot of the way we view our work is mitigating risk. And she's at risk because of the stress on the family unit.
Yes, and let me say that the palliative care field that Dr. Bajak brought into life maybe 25 years ago is one of the greatest additions to service, mental and physical, that we have had, because it acknowledges what is needed at the point of the actual reality of the person and the system. And palliation is a magnificent word. It is not tempering. It is not tolerating. No, it is the active act of caring.
And in my world, when we have clients who are in need of palliative care from a clinical treatment perspective, we like to start those conversations early. We like to talk with the entire family and explain the comprehensive approach that palliative care takes around care and treatment.
Yeah, it's what we want. The marvelous thing is that there is now response from the medical profession to that need. And, people are grown-ups. They're willing to hear the truth. What they want is then the truth to follow with service that matches what their need is. What I call truly helping rather than simply offering analgesics.
What's interesting to me as well, having worked in medical care for 25 years, is it's wonderful when providers are doing the kind of work that they want to do in in all professions.
Yes.
One of the doctors on our team, who's emergency medicine trained, is also trained in palliative care. And in fact, she left emergency medicine and works in palliative care now. And is doing the kind of work that she really has a passion for. And that comes across with all of her clients.
What a great service. And very, very needed.
Yeah. I'm going to just see if there's any questions in the chat right now before we wrap up.
Great.
I know how valuable your time is and everyone's time here. Jay, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to have this conversation with us. We look forward to working with you, and we'll continue to follow your significant contributions to the financial advisor community. So thank you.
John, it's a privilege to be your patient, your client, and I want to thank all the people that took their time, which is their treasure, to join us today. And it was a great privilege to be able to talk with you and with them. Thank you.
Thank you again. Have a great day.
You too.